My sister told me to give her my savings. I said no, bought a one-way ticket to another country, and started a new job. 2 hours later, Dad texted her and said, "Sign off on her mortgage or don't come back." By midnight, I had closed all of her accounts. 57 irate calls by the morning. The talk took place on a Tuesday afternoon. I was sitting at my kitchen table with my laptop open, going over the consulting firm's quarterly reports. I had worked there for the last 8 years, moving up from junior analyst to senior project manager. My phone rang. The screen showed Madison's name. "Hey, Jess," she replied, her voice brightening in a way that made it clear she wanted something. "Do you have a minute? I need to talk about something important." My elder sister was always good at making her problems sound like family emergencies that everyone needed to deal with. I shut my laptop and got ready. "Jason and I found the perfect house," she said, without waiting for me to answer. 4 bedrooms, a new kitchen, and it's close enough to the private schools we've been looking into. The sellers accepted our offer, but we still need to make up the difference in our down payment. I looked at the wall calendar across from me, where I'd highlighted my trip to Barcelona. The consulting contract I had worked up would start in 3 weeks. I still had 4 months left on my apartment lease, but I had previously talked to my landlord about breaking it early. After months of paperwork, my work visa was finally approved 3 weeks ago. Everything was set up. I questioned, how big of a gap? Even though something in my chest already knew where this was going. 38,000. We're short exactly $38,000. She paused to let the number sink in. "I know you've been saving a lot. Dad said you had about $70,000 in your accounts." My jaw constricted. Dad shouldn't have talked to anyone about my money, but that could wait. "Madison, that money represents years of careful planning. I eat budget meals. I haven't taken a real vacation in 4 years, and I've been working towards something specific." "Right, your big European adventure," she remarked, dismissiveness coming into her tone. "Jessica, I'm talking about a house, a real investment, a place where Jason and I can build our future, where our kids will grow up. You're talking about moving temporarily for some contract work that might not even happen." The condescension hurt more than I thought it would. Madison has always been the best. At 24, I married a man our parents loved. I was squandering my life on career goals while I worked a good job at a drug company and spoke about kids and mortgages. I said gently, "My contract is signed. The company in Barcelona is waiting for me. This isn't just a passing thought. Then put it off for 6 months, or perhaps a year. Please help me protect this house. And when Jason receives his promotion, we'll pay you back with interest." I had heard several versions of this promise when we were kids. Madison stealing my birthday money to buy concert tickets. She would definitely pay me back. Madison borrowed my car for a road vacation and brought it back with a damaged taillight and an empty tank. She would absolutely have it fixed. Madison takes credit for the history project I helped her finish, because she undoubtedly told the teacher that I helped. I told him I wasn't putting off my career for his down payment. The call went dead. When Madison spoke again, her voice had dropped to a hazardous level of silence. "Right now, you're being quite selfish. Do you get that? I'm your sister. Family helps each other. But it seems that your brief vacation is more important than my real existence. It's not a break. Mom and Dad are going to be so upset when they find out about this. After all the things they've done for you, you can't even help your sister when she needs it." She hung up before I could say anything. 3 hours went by. I tried to concentrate on my task, but I couldn't. Then my phone rang again. The number for Dad. He said, "Jessica," without saying hello. Madison called us and was quite upset. She told him what was going on with the house. "Did she say that she wants more than half of my savings? She said that you wouldn't assist your sister find a place for her family to live. Your mom is going crazy. We taught you better than this." Hearing the disappointment in his voice took me back to when I was a kid. Every time Madison did something great, everyone cheered. But when I did something great, everyone just nodded politely. Every time Madison had a problem, it was a family emergency. But when I had a problem, it was a chance to learn something new. Dad, I have plans, contracts, and a job offer that might alter everything for me. He said that Madison has a family to worry about too. She's making something real and long-lasting. You're going after consulting contracts all over Europe like a college student on spring break. The comparison went precisely where he wanted it to. I was still being regarded as the irresponsible younger daughter at 32, whose dreams were cute but not as important as Madison's typical life path. I said, I'm not giving her my savings. And I was shocked by how steady my voice was. Dad remarked, You'd better think about your priorities again. Don't expect us to support your impulsive decisions if you can't support your family when they need you. He hung up. I sat still for a few minutes, phone still pressed to my ear, listening to dead air. Then, something changed inside me. Not anger, but a clarity I'd never felt before. I opened my laptop and pulled up the Barcelona contract. Reading through it again, I felt that flutter of excitement I'd been hiding under layers of family guilt. The position was perfect. Leading a team of analysts for a multinational expansion project, working with cutting-edge methodologies, earning almost twice my current salary with generous housing stipends. My phone buzzed with a text from Madison. Dad said, You're being difficult. Last chance to do the right thing before I withdraw my offer to pay you back. I viewed her offer as though she was doing me a favor by proposing to maybe eventually return money she wanted me to gift her. I texted back a single word, no. Then I opened my banking app and bought a one-way ticket to Barcelona, departing in 6 days instead of 3 weeks. The earlier flight cost an extra $800, but watching the confirmation process complete felt like breaking through water after being held underwater too long. My phone rang immediately. Madison, what the hell? Jessica, you can't just... I can, actually. And I did. I leave in 6 days. You're making a huge mistake. When this contract falls through and you come crawling back broke and embarrassed, don't expect any of us to bail you out. I wouldn't dream of it, I said, and ended the call. For 90 minutes, blessed silence. I started a packing list, researched Barcelona neighborhoods, and emailed my new supervisor to confirm my earlier arrival date. She responded enthusiastically, mentioning they could actually use me for some preliminary work before the official start date. Then Dad texted, Sign off on Madison's mortgage as a co-signer or don't bother coming back. Your mom agrees. We stand with your sister. I read it 3 times, and each time I saw more and more manipulation. They wanted my signature, which meant Madison's finances were worse than she'd said. It was bad enough that she needed a co-signer with my credit score and savings to qualify for the mortgage at all. Co-signing meant liability. If Madison and Jason defaulted, the debt became mine. My credit would drop, and my savings could be seized. The Barcelona contract wouldn't matter because I'd be stuck with my sister's financial decisions forever. My hands shook as I typed, I'm not co-signing anything. And if not coming back is the price for living my own life, I'll pay it. His response came right away. You're no longer welcome in this family. Don't talk to your mom. She's too upset to talk to you anyway. Something shattered inside me. But instead of the collapse I expected, it felt like a door slamming shut on a drafty room. Suddenly, it was quiet and warm. I opened my laptop and started going through a mental checklist I didn't know I was making. First, I looked at all of my bank accounts. My savings account had $72,450, which was less than what Dad had told Madison, which meant he had been lying about my assets to pressure me. My checking account had another $8,200, and my investment portfolio had $23,600. Then I found the problem. Years ago, when I was 24 and Madison was planning her wedding, I added her as an authorized user on one of my credit cards so she could book vendors. She said it was only temporary, until her own credit got better after she paid her bills. I had completely forgotten about it. The card now had a balance of $6,847. In the last 3 weeks, there have been charges for boutique purchases, restaurant bills, and a spa package. This was right around the time Madison would have been getting ready to pitch my savings. My phone kept buzzing with calls from Mom, Madison, and unknown numbers that I thought were other family members being used in the guilt campaign. I ignored them all and called my credit card company. "I need to remove an authorized user and dispute recent charges," I told the representative. While I was on hold, I opened my bank's website and found something worse. Madison had named herself as a beneficiary on one of my savings accounts. Not joint ownership, but positioned to claim the funds if something happened to me. The setup dated back 5 years. Another favor I'd granted and forgotten. Another way she'd embedded herself in my financial life. The credit card person came back and said, "We've taken Madison Chen off the list of people who can use the card. We need to look into the charges that are in question." I gave her access to her card years ago, but I never approved these specific purchases, I said. She used the card without my knowledge or consent after I denied her a loan request. This was technically true. The representative's tone shifted, becoming more sympathetic. She initiated a fraud investigation and reversed the charges temporarily while they reviewed the case. Next, I called my bank. Removing Madison as a beneficiary required a simple form, which they emailed immediately. I completed it and scanned it back within minutes. Then I went further. Madison had my login information for a shared streaming service we'd split for years. That login email matched my primary email address, the one connected to my banking, my investments, my entire digital life. I'd been meaning to change it forever, using work or exhaustion as excuses, but really, I just never imagined needing this level of security against my own sister. I changed every password, every security question, every recovery email and phone number. I enabled two-factor authentication on accounts that had been operating on trust alone. Each change felt like sealing a window I'd left open for years, never realizing how vulnerable I'd been. My phone hit 23 missed calls around 11 p.m. I silenced it entirely and kept working. I contacted my investment broker and added additional security protocols. Verbal passwords were required for any transactions. No changes to beneficiary designations without in-person verification and government ID. The overnight representative sounded confused by my urgency until I explained I was protecting my assets from family members with access to my personal information. "That's actually more common than you'd think," she said kindly. "I'm setting up the extra protection now. Your accounts are locked down tight." Finally, around midnight, I opened my email and drafted a message to everyone in my immediate family. "I'm relocating to Barcelona for a consulting contract. I will not be co-signing Madison's mortgage, contributing to her down payment, or maintaining any shared financial access with family members going forward. All accounts have been secured. This isn't negotiable or open for discussion. I wish you all well." I added my professional email address, the one they didn't have, and specified that my personal email would be discontinued. Then I pressed send and closed my laptop. Sleep seemed impossible, but exhaustion dragged me under around 2 a.m. I woke at 7 to my phone's persistent vibrating despite silent mode. The screen showed 57 missed calls, 34 text messages, and 12 voicemails. I made coffee first. Then I sat down and began reading. Madison's text evolved from angry to desperate to threatening over the course of the night. 1:15 a.m. "You petty. I can't believe you closed everything. We needed that card for closing costs." 1:47 a.m. "Jason is furious. You've ruined everything. The house is going to fall through because of you." 2:23 a.m. "Dad's right. You're selfish and immature and you're going to end up alone with your stupid career." 3:08 a.m. "Please, Jessica, please. We're family. I'm begging you to reconsider." 3:45 a.m. "Fine. Keep your precious money, but don't come crawling back when your Barcelona dream falls apart." Dad's voicemails were colder. "You've made your choice. Don't expect to be invited to family events. Your mother is devastated. I hope whatever you're chasing is worth losing all of us." Mom left one message, her voice thick with tears. "I don't understand why you're being so cruel to your sister. She's always looked up to you. And this is how you repay her love?" This last one almost broke my resolve. Almost. Then I remembered being 14, working my first job at a frozen yogurt shop, saving for a school trip to Washington, D.C. I kept my cash in a lockbox under my bed. One morning, half of it was gone. Madison had taken it for a concert ticket, and when confronted, Mom had said, "She's your older sister. Families share," I thought. I had never made that trip to Washington. The coffee tasted bitter, but I drank it anyway, feeling the caffeine sharpen my thoughts. I had 4 days now before my flight. 4 days to finish severing ties, to prepare for a life where my family's emergencies were no longer my mandatory crisis. Around 9 a.m., Madison called from Jason's phone. I answered, curious what new angle she'd attempt. "Jessica." Jason's voice, measured and diplomatic. "Look, I think things got heated last night. We're all just worried about the house. Can we get together for coffee and talk about this like grown-ups?" "There's nothing to talk about. My decision is final. I know you're upset, but shutting down the credit card in the middle of our closing process was extreme. Madison's been crying all night. She really didn't know those charges would be a problem. She charged almost $7,000 without asking permission, Jason, and then demanded $38,000 more. What part of that seems okay to you?" His pause lasted long enough for me to hear Madison coaching him in the background, her voice an urgent whisper. "She thought the card was still available for family use," he said finally. "She was trying to furnish our future home. Make it nice for when we have kids. On my credit with my money after I told you no to funding your down payment?" My voice stayed calm, which seemed to unsettle him more than anger would have. "Jason, I genuinely hope you two figure out the house situation, but not with my financial backing. Are you really going to let your sister lose her dream home over this? Madison is 35 years old, with a husband and 2 incomes. If you can't afford this house, buy something less expensive. That's what adults do." I hung up before he could respond. The next 3 days blurred together. Packing, forwarding mail, and negotiating an early lease termination with my landlord. Mrs. Patterson was surprisingly accommodating when I explained I was leaving for Barcelona 4 months ahead of schedule. She'd lived in Spain for a decade in her 20s and spoke wistfully about Mediterranean sunsets and the freedom of reinvention. "You're doing the brave thing," she said, agreeing to a reasonable early termination fee that I could easily afford. Most people spend their whole lives thinking about it. Each evening, my phone's missed call count climbed. Various cousins, family friends, even Madison's college roommate, whom I'd met exactly twice. Everyone had been recruited to convince me I was making a terrible mistake, destroying family bonds over money, betraying the sister who'd always been there for me. On the second day, my cousin Derek showed up at my apartment unannounced. I opened the door to find him standing there with coffee and an apologetic expression that immediately put me on guard. "Before you slam the door," he said, "I'm not here to lecture you. Is it okay if I come in for 5 minutes?" I let him in, even though I knew it was a bad idea. He looked at the half-packed boxes and the growing pile of things I was going to give away. "You're really doing this?" he said, sounding impressed instead of judgmental. "I really am." Derek put the coffee on my kitchen counter and leaned against it with his arms crossed. "Your dad called my mom and told her to get in touch with me and talk some sense into you. That you left the family in their time of need," he said. "And you came to tell me that?" "Not at all. I came to tell you that I think you're a badass." He smiled. "Madison has been a nightmare since we were kids. Do you remember when she made everyone think I took money from Grandma's purse on Christmas? She had taken it for a limited edition makeup palette, but I was the one who got grounded for 3 months. I had forgotten about that incident, but it came back to me. Derek's protests of innocence, Madison's tearful insistence that she had seen him near Grandma's purse, and the family division that lasted well into spring. Why didn't anyone believe you? Why don't they believe you now? I asked. Madison has always been good at playing the victim while causing trouble. He picked up his coffee cup. Anyway, I wanted you to know that not everyone thinks you're the bad guy here. My mom doesn't either, for what it's worth. She just won't say anything bad about your dad in public. After Derek left, I felt a little less alone. But the calls kept coming, each one from someone who had believed Madison's story without question and couldn't believe that the quiet, responsible younger sister might have real complaints. My old college roommate, Vanessa, called that evening. Unlike the others, she started with, "Tell me your side." So I did. I told her about the years of small borrowings that turned into big debts, the expectation that my success would support Madison's lifestyle, the credit card charges, the co-signing demand, and the ultimatum from my parents. "Jesus," Vanessa said when I finished. "And they're making you out to be the monster, pretty much. I've known you for 12 years, Jessica. You were the one who planned and budgeted for 6 months before buying a new laptop. The idea that you'd refuse to help family over petty selfishness is insane." She paused. "For whatever it's worth, I think you're making the right choice, and I'm jealous as hell that you have the courage to actually do it." We talked for another hour about Barcelona, about the contract, about the life I was building toward. By the time we hung up, some of the doubt that had been accumulating had dissolved. The third day brought an unexpected visitor, Jason's older brother, Marcus, whom I'd met perhaps 3 times at family events. He caught me in the parking garage as I was loading boxes into a friend's truck for storage. "Jessica, wait," he called, jogging toward me. I turned, wary. Marcus had always seemed decent, but family loyalty ran deep. "Look, I'm supposed to be here convincing you to reconsider," he said, slightly out of breath. "Jason asked me to talk to you, appeal to your sense of family responsibility, all that." But he hesitated. "But I've been watching my brother and your sister's financial train wreck for 2 years now, and I told him months ago they couldn't afford the house they were pursuing." Marcus shook his head. "They ignored every piece of practical advice I gave them. Jason has been spending more than he can afford since college, and Madison makes it worse by spending too much herself. This was news to me. I thought Jason was the stable one, the responsible husband, keeping Madison from being impulsive." "Their credit is terrible," Marcus continued. "They've maxed out multiple cards. They were barely making the minimum payments. Somehow they convinced themselves that a huge mortgage was the answer. When Jason told me they had lined you up as a co-signer, I told him you would be crazy to agree. He didn't say that, of course, because I also told him that if they defaulted, they would ruin your credit, and probably your career prospects." He looked me straight in the eye. "You dodging this bullet is the smartest thing you could have done. I'm here to tell you that, not to guilt trip you." After Marcus left, I sat in my almost empty apartment, feeling vindicated but also uneasy. How many other family members privately agreed with me but publicly supported Madison out of obligation or fear of conflict? That night, Madison sent me an email. There was no subject line, just a lot of raw emotion. "Jessica, I've been trying to figure out how you could be so cruel for the last 3 days. We're sisters. We grew up together, had the same parents, and shared everything. And the first time I asked you for real help, you turned your back on me. Do you remember when you were 16 and wanted to go to that art program in Rhode Island? Mom and Dad said it was too expensive, but I used my graduation money to help pay for it. I sacrificed for you. I've always sacrificed for you. I'm asking for the same help now, and you're acting like I'm a stranger trying to scam you. The credit card charges I was paying for our house, where you could have stayed any time and where your future nieces and nephews would have grown up knowing their aunt. But instead, you've chosen a job over family. You've chosen money over love. And when you're alone in a foreign country with no one who cares about you, remember that you made this choice." I read it twice, then opened my documents folder and found the art program information from 16 years ago. It took some searching, but I eventually found the financial records my parents had kept. The program had cost $3,000. I had earned $1,800 from my yogurt shop job. Mom and Dad had contributed $800. The final $400 had come from our grandmother, not Madison. Madison's graduation money had gone toward a car, a detail I remembered clearly because she'd driven it to my high school graduation and accidentally scraped the bumper, which I'd felt guilty about for years, even though I hadn't been driving. She'd rewritten history so thoroughly that she might have actually believed her version. Or maybe she'd always known the truth and counted on me not checking. I didn't respond to her email. There was nothing to say to someone who would lie that egregiously and expect to go unchallenged. The morning of my departure, I woke at 4 a.m., too restless to sleep.
I made coffee and stood by my apartment window, watching Philadelphia's pre-dawn streets, wondering if I'd feel nostalgic later for this view, this city, this life I was abandoning. I didn't feel nostalgic. I felt free. My phone buzzed with a text from my mother. "Please don't go. We can work this out. Family is everything." I stared at that message for a long time. Family is everything. The phrase that had governed my entire existence, that had been wielded like a weapon every time I considered prioritizing myself. But family wasn't everything. Some families were toxic. Some families demanded you set yourself on fire to provide them warmth. Some families loved you conditionally, only when you were useful, compliant, willing to sacrifice your dreams for their comfort. I typed back, "Family should want what's best for each other. This is what's best for me." Then I silenced my phone, gathered my luggage, and headed for the airport. Except Madison had never been there for me. Not when I'd worked 3 part-time jobs to avoid student loans while she partied through undergrad on Mom and Dad's dime. Not when I'd spent my 27th birthday alone in a hospital waiting room during an appendectomy because she'd been too busy with wedding dress shopping. Not when I'd been passed over for promotion last year, and she'd responded with, "Well, maybe if you were more of a team player like Jason." The realizations kept coming, each one a small earthquake, rearranging my internal landscape. The night before my flight, I allowed myself one moment of doubt. I sat in my empty apartment surrounded by suitcases and boxes designated for storage and considered calling Madison, apologizing, finding some compromise that would restore the family peace. Then my phone rang. Unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. "Jessica, this is Aunt Carol, my mother's older sister, a woman I'd always respected for her directness." "Hi, Aunt Carol."
"I'm calling because your mother asked me to, but not for the reason she thinks." Carol's voice carried a dry amusement. "She wanted me to convince you to help Madison with this house purchase. Instead, I'm calling to tell you congratulations on your new job and to ask if you need anything before you leave." The kindness caught me completely off guard. My throat tightened. "Thank you," I managed. "Your mother means well, but she's always enabled Madison's entitlement. Your father, too. They've spent 3 decades treating you like the responsible one who doesn't need support because you're so capable, while Madison gets rescued from every consequence." She paused. "I watched you grow up apologizing for taking up space while your sister demanded the spotlight. If you don't leave now, you'll still be apologizing at 50. Tears spilled over before I could stop them. "I'm scared," I admitted. "What if they're right? What if I regret this?"
"Then you regret it in Barcelona with an international career and your savings intact," Carol said firmly. "Much better than regretting it in Philadelphia, broke and resentful, wondering what you could have become." We talked for another hour. She told me stories I'd never heard about my mother and Madison's relationship, patterns that had apparently been replicating themselves across generations. By the time we hung up, something had settled in my chest. Not certainty exactly, but the absence of that desperate need for family approval that had governed my decisions for 3 decades. I boarded the flight at 6:12 p.m. the next day. My phone stayed in airplane mode. Barcelona welcomed me with golden light and Mediterranean warmth. The apartment my new company had arranged overlooked a narrow street lined with cafes, their outdoor tables filled with people speaking rapid Spanish, their laughter rising toward my 3rd-floor windows. The first week was a blur of orientation meetings, team introductions, and intensive language practice with a tutor the company provided. My boss, Elena, was strict but supportive, pushing our team to come up with new ideas while trusting our skills. She introduced me to her network across the city. Suddenly, I was having dinners with professionals from 6 different countries, talking about projects and opportunities I never thought I could access.
2 weeks in, I finally checked the phone number I'd kept active for emergencies. 43 new voicemails. I deleted them without listening, but I did read through the texts, watching the evolution from anger to bargaining to eventually a kind of resigned hostility. Madison's final message, sent 3 days after I'd left, read, "The house fell through. Jason's parents had to co-sign a different property in a worse neighborhood because apparently you weren't the only person who refused to help us. I hope you're happy. You've destroyed our future for your selfish adventure." I felt something reading that, but it wasn't guilt. It was clarity. Their backup plan had involved multiple people refusing to take on their financial risk. I wasn't the villain. I was just the first person who'd said no. A week later, I received a Facebook message from someone I hadn't thought about in years. Rachel, Madison's maid of honor from her wedding. We'd never been close, but she'd always been kind to me at family gatherings. "Jessica, I hope this doesn't seem rude, but I wanted to get in touch. Madison has been writing all the time about what happened, making you look like a selfish monster. I don't like it. I have known Madison for 15 years, and I have seen her do the same things to other people. You're the first person who really said no and meant it." That night, we ended up video chatting. Rachel told me stories I'd never heard before, like how Madison borrowed money from friends and never paid it back, how she took credit for group projects in college, and how she always made sure she looked like the victim or the hero. Rachel said that Madison once got 3 of us to pool our money to rent a beach house for spring break. We each gave her $400. Then she found out the place was already booked and kept our money to save for next year. We never saw that money again, and there was never a next year. Why did you keep being friends with her? Honestly, because it was easier to be on Madison's good side than her bad side, Rachel said, her face becoming serious. She can be charming and fun when she wants to be, but if you cross her, she'll launch a campaign against you that makes high school bullying look like nothing. She hesitated. I'm not proud of that. But seeing how she's turned your whole family against you now has finally made me recognize how bad that friendship was. I've been slowly pulling away. That conversation changed something in me. I'd been second-guessing myself for weeks, wondering if I had overreacted or if I should have found a way to meet in the middle. But Rachel's point of view confirmed what I had suspected. Madison's behavior wasn't about me. It was a pattern, and I was just the first person in our family brave enough to break it. As I moved on from orientation to real project management, the work in Barcelona got more intense. Our team was building a supply chain optimization model for a client who was expanding into Eastern European markets, and the complexity was thrilling. Elena pushed us hard, but celebrated our successes with great enthusiasm. I found myself working longer hours than I ever had in Philadelphia, but I felt energized instead of drained. 3 weeks into the project, after a successful presentation to the client, Elena pulled me aside and said, "Jessica, you have exceptional instincts for this work." The client specifically mentioned how impressed they were with how you identified those bottlenecks in the distribution network. "Thank you. This project is quite interesting," Elena went on. "I want to be honest with you about something. When we hired you, we looked at your resume and were sure of your technical talents. But several of our American workers had trouble adjusting to the foreign setting, the cultural differences, and the lack of clarity. I was worried that you wouldn't do well here. My gut constricted a little. And now, I'm curious if you'd be willing to extend your contract beyond the first term. We have projects planned for Amsterdam, Prague, and maybe even Singapore. You'd be in charge of bigger teams and have more strategic responsibilities," she said with a smile. "Basically, I'm asking if you'd like to make this a permanent job instead of a temporary one." The offer was everything I had hoped for, but didn't think I'd get so soon. I told Elena I needed time to think, but I already knew my answer. The life I was constructing here felt more real than anything I had left behind. That night, I walked around the Gothic Quarter and saw visitors and residents talking in the plazas. I contacted Vanessa and told her they offered me a permanent position. I would be working on multiple international projects, getting a big raise, and being on the leadership track. That's amazing, Jessica. Are you going to take it? Yes, I do. But it involves really committing to this life. Stop acting like this is only for a short time. If things don't work out, you can't go back to Philadelphia anymore. Do you want to go back to Philadelphia? Vanessa asked in a very direct way. I thought about how my flat was empty, how my family only loved me when I did what they wanted, and how heavy the expectations I had carried for 30 years were. No, I really don't. Then quit acting like you need permission to be joyful with this great chance. Get the job, start a new life, email me photographs of sunsets in Barcelona, and make me jealous. I took Elena's offer the next day. Signing the contract felt like the moment on the airplane when the wheels leave the runway, that instant of committed flight where turning back becomes impossible. My new permanent status required paperwork, visa extensions, setting up a local bank account, and finding a long-term apartment. Each administrative task felt like putting down roots, anchoring myself to this new reality. I spent weekends apartment hunting, eventually finding a place near Parc du Tudela, with tall windows and a tiny balcony where I could drink morning coffee and watch the neighborhood wake up. The day I signed the lease, I took a photo of the empty living room, sunlight streaming across hardwood floors, and posted it to social media with a simple caption, "Home." Within hours, comments from college friends, former coworkers, and acquaintances from Philadelphia congratulating me poured in. There were also comments from family members, cousins, my uncle, and even some of my parents' friends with variations of beautiful and so happy for you. That felt like direct, pointed statements of support, even though there was drama in the family. Madison didn't say anything, but she did send a direct message. Cute apartment. I blocked her right away, amazed by how little hesitancy I had. Must be nice to spend my house money on yourself. Around this time, I started seeing an English-speaking psychologist that Elena suggested. Dr. Martinez was an expert in helping people who had moved to a new country and were trying to fit in. But our sessions quickly turned into talking about family issues and the guilt I still felt about choosing myself. You talk about your family's needs as if they're objective facts, Dr. Martinez said during our third session. But needs and wants are different things. Your sister wanted your cash. She didn't need it. But the house, there are thousands of them. They could have picked a different house if they couldn't afford that one. Their desire was rephrased as a need to control you. The sessions helped me recognize how deeply I had been trained to put other people's needs ahead of my own. Family comes first really meant that Jessica's needs came last. What I thought was selfishness was really simply fundamental self-preservation. Weeks turned into months. The consulting project exceeded every expectation. Our team delivered ahead of schedule, under budget, and the client was already negotiating an extension. Elena offered me a permanent position with a substantial raise and a pathway to partnership. I found an apartment of my own, a sun-drenched space near Parc du Tudela. I learned Spanish with increasing fluency, made friends with colleagues and neighbors, and spent weekends exploring the Catalonian countryside. I dated casually, nothing serious, but discovered what it felt like to have conversations where my career ambitions were admired instead of tolerated. I got an email from Aunt Carol 6 months after I left Philadelphia. The subject line said, "Thought you should know." I read it 3 times, feeling strangely detached. The sister I grew up with felt like someone from another lifetime, someone else's memories. The note from Carol at the bottom said, "Your parents are mortified but still blaming you somehow." Inside was a forwarded news article about a local woman arrested for insurance fraud. Madison. The details were sparse, but apparently she and Jason had attempted to stage a burglary at their rental property to collect on an inflated contents policy. The investigation had uncovered previous suspicious claims. I thought you should know. You really dodged a bullet. I said. Thanks for keeping me up to date, and for talking to me before I left. It made everything different. 3 more months went by. Christmas was coming up, and it would be my first one alone. I was excited instead of sad. 7 different friends and co-workers had invited me to parties. I chose a dinner hosted by Elena and her wife, where we ate too much and laughed until midnight. I felt more at home than I had in decades of family gatherings that I had to go to. I was going home through joyful streets, and my phone rang. It was a number I didn't know with a Philadelphia area code. I almost didn't answer, but my curiosity got the better of me. Hello? Hey, Jessica. It's Mong. I stopped walking. Couples and groups of people were moving past me, going to parties late at night. How did you acquire this number? Carol handed it to me. Please don't become mad at her, I begged. She stopped for a moment, and I could tell she was getting stronger. Your father doesn't know I'm calling. What do you want, Mom? Her voice broke when she said, I wanted to wish you a Merry Christmas and say sorry for everything. For taking Madison's side without hearing your side. For treating your goals like hobbies while making hers more important. For making you think you were selfish if you didn't give up all for your family. I stood there with the phone to my ear, trying to figure out what had changed. Finally, I asked, Madison's legal problems made me see things clearly, she claimed. The fraud, the lies to the insurance company, and the financial catastrophe she and Jason made. It all looked so familiar, because I've seen her lie and cheat her whole life. But I called it drive. I called it needing support. She took a shaky breath. And I called you selfish for not letting it happen. Dad still doesn't agree. Your dad is obstinate, but he has started to ask questions about what we did wrong with Madison. He won't tell you, but he knows. It might be years before he admits it. A long pause. You were right to leave, Jessica. You were right about everything. Right. We talked for an hour. She asked about Barcelona, about my work, about my life with genuine interest I couldn't recall receiving before. I told her some of it cautiously, testing whether this change was real or temporary guilt. Before hanging up, she said, I don't expect you to forgive me immediately, or maybe ever, but I needed you to know that I see you now, who you really are, not who I thought you were. And I'm proud of you. I cried after we hung up, standing on a corner in Barcelona's Gothic quarter, tears freezing on my cheeks. But they weren't tears of regret. The Barcelona project turned into a permanent job, then a promotion. I built a life I never thought possible. I was professionally fulfilled, financially secure, and surrounded by people who valued me for my abilities instead of my compliance. 9 months after I left, Madison finally sent me an email with carefully chosen words. There wasn't really an apology, but she did say that things had gotten complicated and suggested that we might reconnect when things calmed down. I replied politely, but without making any promises, and the conversation faded away naturally. Dad never called. That hurt sometimes when I was alone, but it was a clean pain, not the infected wound of ongoing manipulation. It was the healthy ache of a cut that was healing properly. A year and a half after leaving Philadelphia, I stood in my Barcelona apartment looking over a proposal for a project in Singapore. My team was being asked to help with an international expansion that was even bigger than the one that had brought me here. I had to commit for at least 2 years and get paid a lot of money. My phone was silent on the counter. I didn't have to deal with family members calling me and asking for my time, money, or agreement. I didn't feel guilty about choosing my own path. That night, I accepted the Singapore offer and called Aunt Carol to tell her the news. You sound happy, she said. I am, actually, genuinely happy. Your mother will be pleased to hear that. She asks about you all the time. Tell her I'm doing well. Tell her I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. Because I was. The girl who'd have sacrificed everything to keep family peace no longer existed. In her place was a woman who'd learned that the most loving thing you can do for yourself is refuse to set yourself on fire to keep others warm. The angry calls had stopped by morning, eventually replaced by this: the quiet satisfaction of a life built on my own terms. In a city that felt more like home than anywhere I'd been before, with a future limited only by my own ambition rather than someone else's demands. Madison got her house eventually, something smaller and more affordable, funded by Jason's parents under strict conditions. She and I exchange cards on holidays now, superficial pleasantries that acknowledge our shared history without requiring reconciliation. And me? I'm writing this from my Singapore apartment, overlooking Marina Bay, preparing for another week of challenges I've chosen, obstacles I'm equipped to handle, and success I've earned, rather than inherited or demanded. 57 angry calls felt like the end of my family. Turned out, it was just the beginning of my